Story 1. The Blackwood Tavern had stood for nearly a century, nestled in the heart of a town that had long since stopped caring about its ghosts. The tavern was dimly lit, with wooden walls that reeked of old whiskey and stories half told. On most nights, it was just another ordinary bar, people laughing, drinks clinking, a jukebox playing some forgotten tune. But one particular night, the tavern bore witness to something that no one could explain. It started like any other evening. The regulars, half drunk, occupied their usual spots. The bartender, Mason, polished the counter with the same absent-minded routine he had followed for the past 10 years. The television buzzed with a muted sports broadcast. A few newcomers sat by themselves, nursing their beers, lost in their own worlds. And then, at precisely 11:34 p.m., the door creaked open. A man walked in. At first glance, nothing about him seemed unusual. He was tall, clad in a long dark coat, with a weathered face and hollow eyes. His presence was unremarkable, yet something about him sent a strange chill through the room. He walked to the bar, his footsteps eerily silent against the wooden floor. No one paid him much mind. "Beer," he muttered, voice low and dry. Mason barely looked at him as he slid a bottle across the counter. The man nodded, took a sip, and stared ahead. He didn't check his phone. He didn't talk. He just sat there, his fingers wrapped around the bottle, his eyes distant. An hour passed. The man drank slowly, methodically, as if savoring every drop. Then, at exactly 12:34 a.m., he stood up and walked out. No one noticed his departure, not until the bar emptied and Mason began locking up for the night. It was only the next evening, when the bar's security footage was reviewed, that the horror began. Mason had stayed late the previous night, and before heading home, he decided to check the security cameras. He skimmed through the footage, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. And then he saw it. Rewinding, he focused on the moment the man entered. At first, everything looked normal. But as Mason watched closely, his stomach twisted. The man's reflection was missing from the bar's mirrors. The other patrons didn't react when he walked in. In fact, they barely acknowledged his presence, as if he wasn't even there. Mason's heart pounded as he fast-forwarded to the moment the man took his beer. The bottle moved, lifted to the man's lips, yet in the reflection behind the counter, the bottle appeared to float in midair. Mason's hand shook as he scrolled to the final moments. The man finished his drink, stood up, and then, without so much as a flicker, he vanished. Not walked out. Not stepped outside. Just disappeared. Panic set in. Mason called the bar's owner, Steve, and together, they replayed the footage over and over again. Steve, usually a skeptic, turned pale as he watched. "This has to be some kind of glitch," Steve whispered. Mason wasn't so sure. Word spread quickly. The regulars came back, eager to see the footage for themselves. Some laughed it off as an elaborate prank, but others, especially the older patrons, exchanged nervous glances. "I think I know who that was," an old man named Hank muttered one night, his voice barely above a whisper. "Back in '82, there was a guy named Samuel Grayson. Used to drink here every night. Always ordered a single beer. Never spoke much. Then one night, he left, walked straight into the road, and got hit by a truck. Died on impact. Legend says he never left," Hank continued. "Folks used to talk about a ghost wandering this place. A man who'd sit at the bar, drink his beer, then disappear. People stopped seeing him after a while. Figured he'd moved on. Guess they were wrong." The next few nights were tense. No one sat in the seat the ghost had occupied. The jukebox acted up, playing songs no one had selected. The lights flickered, and the beer taps sputtered randomly. Then, exactly a week after the ghost's visit, at 11:34 p.m., the door creaked open again. Mason and the others froze as the same man walked in. He moved the same way, silent and detached. The bar felt deathly quiet as he approached the counter. Mason, hands trembling, set down a bottle of beer. The man nodded and took a sip. The jukebox let out a distorted, static-laden tune. Minutes stretched into an eternity. No one dared move. Then, at 12:34 a.m., just like before, the man stood up and walked toward the door. But this time he stopped. He turned. And for the first time, he spoke. "They never found my body." A suffocating silence gripped the room. Then, in an instant, he was gone. The next morning, Mason called the police. He told them everything. At first, they were skeptical, but when they checked old records, they discovered something chilling. Samuel Grayson had indeed died in 1982, but his body had never been recovered. Official reports stated that he had been struck by a truck, but by the time authorities arrived, his remains had vanished. The driver, in a state of shock, had sworn that Samuel had simply disappeared on impact. Determined to put the mystery to rest, Mason and Steve led a search behind the tavern, near the old, abandoned alleyway where Samuel had supposedly died. Digging through the dirt and debris, they unearthed something horrific. Samuel Grayson's remains had been hidden all these years, buried beneath the very ground where he had once stood. The police confirmed the identity, and Samuel was finally given a proper burial. Since that night, the Blackwood Tavern has never seen the ghost again. The strange occurrences ceased. The jukebox played normally, the light stopped flickering, and the seat Samuel once occupied remained empty. But every year, on the anniversary of his death, at exactly 11:34 p.m., the door still creaks open, though no one enters. And every morning after, a single, empty beer bottle is found sitting on the bar. Story 2. The storm raged mercilessly outside as the neon sign of the Hollow Oak Inn flickered in the darkness. The isolated roadside bar and stood at the edge of Blackwood Road, a place known for its eerie past. It was a cold, wet night when a couple entered the establishment, shaking off the rain from their coats. The bartender, an old man named Gus, glanced at them as they approached the counter. The man was in his early 30s, tall and well-built, with sharp features and piercing green eyes. His dark-haired companion, a woman with pale skin and an unsettlingly beautiful face, clutched his arm as she looked around nervously. "2 beers, please," the man ordered, his voice deep and steady. Gus poured the drinks, his eyes scanning the couple. "Rough night out there, huh?" The man nodded as he took a sip. "Yeah, we were driving through and saw this place. Thought we'd stop for a drink and maybe a room for the night." Gus wiped the counter absent-mindedly. "You got lucky. Not many places open this late around here." The woman shivered slightly, casting wary glances at the dimly lit corners of the bar. A few other patrons sat at their tables, sipping drinks and murmuring amongst themselves. The air felt heavy, charged with something intangible. After finishing their beers, the man looked up at Gus. "Got a room available?" Gus hesitated, his fingers tightening around the cloth in his hands. "Yeah, room 207. Last one down the hall." The man slid a few bills across the counter, and Gus handed over the key. As the couple walked toward the stairs, one of the regulars, an old man with a weathered face, leaned toward Gus. "They ain't from around here, are they?" Gus shook his head, staring at the stairs where the couple had disappeared. "Nope. And I got a bad feeling about this." The next morning, the sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden hue over the Hollow Oak Inn. Gus arrived early to open the bar, expecting to see the couple come down for breakfast. But as the hours passed, there was no sign of them. By noon, Concern settled into Gus's gut like a stone. He climbed the stairs and knocked on the door of room 207. "Hey, folks! Checkout time was an hour ago." Silence. He knocked harder. Still no response. A sense of unease crawled up his spine as he pulled out his master key and slowly turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing an empty room. The bed was made, the towels were untouched, and there was no sign anyone had ever been inside. Gus frowned, stepping inside. There were no bags, no clothes, nothing. It was as if the couple had never been there. A chill settled in his bones. He hurried downstairs and checked the guest book. He remembered the man signing it the night before, but as he flipped through the pages, their names were gone. His hands trembled as he turned to the bar's security cameras. He rewound the footage to the previous night and hit play. The screen showed the rain pouring outside, the bar with its few patrons, and himself standing behind the counter. But there was no sign of the couple. He stared at the screen, his heart hammering in his chest. He remembered serving them. He had talked to them. The other patrons had seen them. But the footage showed nothing. No one had walked through that door. No one had ordered beer. No one had taken the key to room 207. His breath came in short, panicked gasps as he ran to the other patrons. "Tell me you saw them! The couple last night. The guy with green eyes and the pale woman." The patrons exchanged uneasy glances. "Gus, who are you talking about?" "The couple that came in. They sat right there. I gave them room 207. One of the men shook his head. "You were talking to yourself last night, Gus. We just figured you had too much to drink." Gus staggered backward. His head swam. He knew they had been there. He had seen them, spoken to them, but they had vanished without a trace. The police arrived later that day. They searched the room, the bar, and even the nearby woods. There was no evidence that anyone had checked into room 207. The guest log showed no new entries, and the security footage confirmed that no one had entered the inn the previous night. Detective Harold Evans, a grizzled officer who had seen his fair share of strange cases, leaned against the counter. "So you're telling me you served beer to two ghosts?" Gus's hands clenched into fists. "I know what I saw, damn it. They were real. They were here." Evans exhaled, rubbing his temples. "This isn't the first time something weird has happened on Blackwood Road. People have reported strange figures, phantom hitchhikers, voices in the night. But disappearing guests? That's a new one." One of the officers tapped on his tablet. "Sir, I ran a quick search on missing persons. 2 people matching Gus's description disappeared on this road 30 years ago." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Their names were Jonathan Reese and Lillian Harper," the officer continued. "They vanished one stormy night after stopping at a roadside inn. Their car was found abandoned near Blackwood Road. They were never seen again." Gus felt the blood drain from his face. "That's not possible. They were here last night. They ordered drinks." Evans stood up and adjusted his coat. "Well, if they were here, they weren't exactly alive." Gus stared at the empty bar, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. Had he really served beer to ghosts? Had the Hollow Oak and welcomed 2 lost souls, only for them to disappear once more into the unknown? The police left, but the mystery remained. Room 207 stayed empty, but some nights, Gus swore he could hear whispers echoing through the halls. The faint sound of glasses clinking. A soft, ghostly laughter drifting through the air. And on stormy nights, the neon sign of the Hollow Oak flickered just a little more than usual, as if acknowledging the spirits that once walked through its doors. The couple had come. And just like that, they were gone. Story 3. The neon sign flickered against the rain-streaked window of the Hollow Oak, a dimly lit bar nestled in the outskirts of town. The air was thick with the scent of aged whiskey and damp wood, a haven for late-night drinkers seeking solitude or shared secrets. That night, a group of 5 friends, Jake, Oliver, Sam, Hannah, and Leo, entered the bar, their laughter cutting through the droning jazz music that crackled from the dusty speakers. They had been celebrating Oliver's birthday, drinking, playing pool, and reminiscing about old times. The atmosphere was light-hearted, filled with jokes and clinking glasses. But as the clock neared midnight, an eerie stillness crept into the bar, as if the air itself had thickened. A strange man sat at the farthest booth, hidden in the shadows. He was dressed in a long tattered coat, his face obscured beneath the rim of his hat. He hadn't ordered a drink, nor had he spoken to anyone. He simply watched. Jake, the most outgoing of the group, nudged Oliver. "That guy's been sitting there all night. Kinda creepy, huh?" Oliver shrugged, too buzzed to care. "Maybe he's just lonely." But the others couldn't shake the unease that curled in their stomachs. At exactly midnight, Leo excused himself to use the restroom. Minutes passed. Then more. "Damn, is he all right?" Hannah asked, checking her phone. "It's been, like, 10 minutes. Sam stood up. "I'll go check on him." He pushed open the restroom door, calling out, "Leo? You good, man?" Silence. The air was damp and heavy. Sam stepped forward cautiously, nudging open a stall door. And there Leo was, lying on the floor, his skin ashen, his mouth agape in a silent scream. His eyes were wide open, lifeless. Sam staggered back, gasping. "Oh my God!" He stumbled out of the restroom, breathless, his face pale. "Guys! It's Leo! He's dead!" The bar fell silent. The bartender, an older man with weary eyes, moved swiftly, already reaching for the phone to call the police. The group rushed into the restroom, Oliver and Jake kneeling beside Leo, shaking him, as if their desperate touch could breathe life back into him. Hannah covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. The police arrived within minutes. Officers swarmed the bar, questioning the group, inspecting the restroom. The coroner arrived, examined the body, and prepared it for transport. But then, Leo's body was gone. Vanished. The coroner turned, his face drained of color. Where is the body?" The group stared in disbelief. Just moments ago, Leo's lifeless form had been right there. There were no windows, no alternate exits in the restroom. There was no way for the body to disappear. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" An officer barked, glaring at the friends. "No!" Hannah shrieked. "We saw him! He was right there!" A frantic search ensued. The entire bar was combed through, but there was no trace of Leo's body. It was as if he had never existed. The bartender stepped forward, his voice hoarse. This has happened before." The room fell silent. "What the hell do you mean?" Oliver demanded. The bartender's eyes darkened. "I've owned this place for 25 years. Every decade, someone dies in that restroom. And every time, their body disappears." A cold shiver ran down their spines. "That's impossible," an officer muttered. "Where do they go?" The bartender hesitated before whispering. "No one knows. But I swear, it's the bar. It doesn't let them leave." The officers dismissed his claims as superstition. They searched the premises again, this time extending into the alley, the storage rooms, the basement. Nothing. The group, devastated and terrified, sat in shock. Jake whispered, "This isn't real. This isn't real." As dawn broke, the police had no answers. Leo was declared missing, but deep down, his friends knew the truth. He wasn't missing. He was taken. The bar was shut down temporarily, But it was just another case added to the pile. The town never spoke about the disappearances. It was a quiet, shared horror, an unspoken rule to never ask too many questions. Weeks passed, and the group tried to move on. But the nightmares never stopped. The guilt gnawed at them. And then, one night, Hannah woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. An unknown number. With shaking hands, she answered. "Hello?" At first, silence. Then a whisper. "Help me!" Her blood ran cold. "Leo?" she gasped. But before she could say another word, the line went dead. The hollow oak remained open. People continued to drink, to laugh, to celebrate. But the restroom door always creaked at midnight. And sometimes, in the dim reflection of the bar's mirror, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes would appear, watching, waiting, because the bar was never done taking.